The first 100 days of Donald Trump's unexpected presidency are almost complete. But what has he achieved so far? And are those who voted for him being betrayed? On an UpFront special, we'll debate why Christian evangelicals backed Trump in such huge numbers. And I'll ask Scottie Nell Hughes, a former campaign surrogate for the president, once described as the world's most loyal Trump supporter, whether we can really believe a word he says. Scottie Nell Hughes, thanks for joining me on UpFront. Donald Trump's entire presidential campaign was built on keeping the US out of expensive, pointless, messy wars, learning the mistakes of Iraq and Libya, focusing on problems at home, non-intervention, America first. And yet in less than 100 days in office, he's dropped the biggest non-nuclear bomb in the US arsenal on Afghanistan, sent Navy SEALs into Yemen, threatened North Korea with attack, and escalated US bombing campaigns in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Non-intervention was all a lie, wasn't it?
Well, no, it wasn't non-intervention. This is showing the world that a new sheriff in town and this sort of pacifier type form of foreign policy that we've had for the last 8 years under Barack Obama is no more. This is peace by strength. This is what we've used. This is what President Trump said while he was candidate Trump.
No, it's what all the other Republican candidates said, peace by strength.
He said peace by strength.
We'll stay at home. Let's fix America. Let's not go into Syria, he said. Again and again.
But
he said, let's stay out of Syria.
We are not in Syria.
Let's not bomb Syria, he said, without congressional approval. Did he not say we shouldn't bomb Syria without congressional approval?
We did bomb Syria. We bombed,
with congressional approval.
We bombed a military air base after what had happened was a horrible, horrific video that happened to children. But if you want to believe that what we did in Syria was a response just because of the video and the horrible chemical attacks that supposedly Assad did on his own people, then I can show you pictures of all around the world, horrific things that dictators are doing to their own people, and we're not bombing there. What we are seeing is a change in policy. You are seeing now Assad knows that there is a new person in town that is handling this.
What we're seeing is a change in what Trump said throughout the campaign.
You want to say he's flip-flopping. He is saying
I don't want to say it. Hold on. Let's just go through what he said. The only reason President Obama wants to attack Syria is to save face over his very dumb red line. Do not attack Syria. Fix USA. How does a guy who says that go to attacking Syria in his first 100 days?
Because this was not just about attacking Syria. If he wanted to attack Syria, he would put a bomb right on top of Assad's head. That is not what he did. He sent a clear message to him. What that message was, not only to Assad, to Russia, but more importantly, the crazy man that we know is running North Korea right now, which is the bigger threat right now.
He did exactly in Syria what Obama wanted to do in 2013 after a similar...
So then why didn't Obama do it?
Because Congress wouldn't give him approval and people like Donald Trump were telling him not to do it.
This did not take congressional approval for what
This is what you said in September 2013. Stay out of Syria. We can't fix Detroit. What makes O think he can fix Syria?
Absolutely.
So stay out then, but go in now.
We're not in Syria right now. If we wanted to actually go in Syria, we would actually put people...
Nor was Obama going into Syria. He was doing exactly the same thing that Trump did.
But he didn't. We have no idea what President Obama's foreign policy was.
Because people like Donald Trump and yourself are saying don't do it.
I'm so glad that President Obama, thank you for admitting that Obama actually listened to me and President Trump. That shows that leadership from behind. What President Trump is doing is leadership from in front. He's actually getting ahead of the game and sending the message. I think sending 59 Tomahawks is a very clear message that we are
to protect Syrian civilians.
We are not afraid if needed. So
to protect Syrian civilians.
Mess with us.
Was it to protect Syrian civilians? He said he saw innocent babies on the news.
He saw innocent babies.
Is that why he acted?
It was a retribution to say, if you do something like this, we have no fear.
Do you think he was really moved by innocent babies?
Absolutely.
And yet he bans those innocent babies from entering the United States. Do you find that odd?
No, I think he's actually he's the only person, the only candidate that was there to actually have innocent babies be born in the United States.
No, he's banning innocent Syrian babies from entering the United States.
No, he's banning refugees,
which include innocent Syrian babies. Do they
coming into the country? You know what? Do it the right way. Let's put all of our. There's enough resources in the Midwest. It's not like we're pulling out right now of the Middle East, saying that we're not going to help these refugees. We want to put our resources in.
He says he was moved by innocent babies on TV.
Absolutely.
But he bans those innocent babies from entering the U.S.
So then let's, instead of opening up our borders and going on and stressing ourselves out in an already bloated budget and already a debt that we've got $19 trillion in debt. Let's actually take care of the problem. Let's force Assad to be dealt with in the right way.
When you look at the United States right now, it seems to have a president who is erratic, inconsistent, all over the place on issues big and small. As candidate, he said NATO was obsolete. Now he says it isn't obsolete. He said the chair of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, should be ashamed of herself. Now he says, I like her, I respect her. He said he'd get rid of the Export-Import Bank. Now he's going to keep it. He said Mexico would pay for the wall. Now he says US taxpayers are going to pay for the wall. Someone like yourself who defends Trump, you were even paid to defend Trump on US cable news. It must be very hard doing what you do. Any day you say something to defend him, tomorrow he might throw you under the bus, switch positions.
You know what, listen, NATO is a good thing. The XIM Bank could be a good thing. The problem is that they'd been allowed to be corrupted for the last 8 years. And even before that,
Oh, and in 80 days he changed NATO, did he?
Well, no, he didn't change it, but you already have countries stepping up, wanting to pay more into it, like they should, paying their fair share. All he was doing is answering what the Republican Party or even the American people had been seeing, that we had been being taken advantage of in trade, in
Nothing has changed on the NATO front. No policy has changed in NATO. No NATO government has changed anything.
No other countries have
the only thing that's changed is Donald Trump. Not since January 20th.
You're not going to see any more money coming out. Well, like you said, let's talk.
Since January 20th, NATO hasn't changed. Hold on. NATO hasn't changed. Janet Yellen hasn't changed. The Export-Import Bank hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is Donald Trump.
Actually,
he's changed and left all of you behind.
Janet Yellen raised our Fed rates went up twice. Our interest rates went up twice. The issues that were on the campaign trail, most time after an election year, people become disengaged. They don't care. They don't want to have anything to do with it. President Trump, by bringing people like the truckers in and the coal miners in
and Goldman Sachs.
Well,
do you remember the Goldman Sachs? Do you remember when he attacked Hillary Clinton and Ted Cruz for Goldman Sachs? And then he filled his administration with Goldman Sachs.
There definitely some.
Don't tell me Goldman Sachs changed, right?
No, I'm not saying Goldman Sachs changed. Trust me.
So then why did he fill his administration with Goldman Sachs?
It's not just Goldman Sachs people.
But he has filled the top jobs with Goldman Sachs people.
Oh yeah, Steve Bannon did work for Goldman Sachs. Thanks for pointing that out. Ryan Priebus never did.
And Gary Cohn.
But I can go over other people that did not work for it. It's called a balance.
Five top officials in the administration. For a guy who spent his whole campaign saying Wall Street controls Hillary Clinton, Ted Cruz gets all his money from Goldman Sachs. Do you not see the sheer hypocrisy, or do you just not want to see it?
No, I'm looking at, let's see, numbers came out today that we have the lowest unemployment rates checks
Thanks Barack Obama. Wow.
No. How in the world can you justify that to Barack Obama?
Unemployment is a lag indicator. Unemployment was falling for the last year.
17-year low. 17-year. They were up underneath. You look at GDP,
was falling for the last year,
look at a GDP growth
of
Barack Obama under 2% when it should have been 3 to 4%, like most presidents have been.
Number one, as you well know, unemployment was falling under President Obama. Trump didn't even trust those figures when it was a different president. Number two, nice pivot, but back to Goldman Sachs. Why did he fill his administration with Goldman Sachs bankers having attacked Wall Street on the campaign, unless he's a hypocrite?
Well, because President Trump looks at success. He likes to see people who achieve.
So why did he attack Wall Street and Goldman Sachs on the campaign trail?
And he likes people who've been achieving good in business and in the military. Hence why you see also a large amount of military, people who are successful in the military and high rankings also being in his administration. And I'm sorry that he doesn't look at politicians.
In the Rust Belt that he would go after the military. He said he would go after Wall Street and big bankers. And he filled his administration with them.
So why not go after the people who know where the leaks are, who know actually what the problems are? So why not? These are folks that he has chosen that he thinks are actually going to help get our economy on track. Then yes,
he attacked for 18 months.
Did he mention them specifically?
Yes, he specifically mentioned Goldman Sachs in relation to Ted Cruz. He specifically referred to Wall Street in relation to Hillary Clinton.
But see, Ted Cruz's wife worked for Goldman Sachs. Everybody has ties. What he's looking, that doesn't mean just that there aren't good people that work for an organization.
You guys got very upset on the right with Barack Obama for taking holidays, for playing golf. Trump attacked Obama for taking holidays, playing golf. Trump has now taken more trips to Mar-a-Lago in his first 3 months than Obama spent on travel in his first 2 years. He spent more time playing golf in his first 100 days than Obama, Bush, and Clinton combined during their first 100 days. That doesn't bother you?
Well, every time outside of the last weekend, which was Easter, he's taken senior staff down there, and there's been some sort of work that has been done at Mar-a-Lago while he's there. Chinese president himself, as well as the president of Japan, other countries, other diplomats have done work down there. I agree, but you also have to understand, this is just getting used to a businessman, not someone who lived in Washington, D.C. like most other politicians. His wife and his son is living in New York. Let's get to the summer. Let's let Barron and the First Lady come to the White House, and let's go from there and see.
So just to be clear, when Donald Trump accused Barack Obama of being a habitual vacationer and playing golf and promised that he wouldn't play golf, he wouldn't have time, and now he's played more golf than Obama, taken more holidays, that's not pure hypocrisy.
Taking more holidays, just because he's in Mar-a-Lago, where do you think that...
Where was Obama? Obama never took senior staffers? I'm sure
he
you
was
did.
in Hawaii, and we very
on.
rarely saw things come out of him when he was on Hawaii. But let me say this: if you look at the White House press corps,
100 days, he's at the golf course every other weekend or every weekend, and that doesn't bother you. How is that not hypocrisy?
We have journalists screaming because he doesn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night. His own staff's going, they wish he could sleep more. The man works harder than anybody else we've ever seen the first 100 days. Hence why you're seeing what it's accomplished.
I'm amazed that you believe that. It's not just U-turns, though. President Trump has told barefaced, demonstrable lies again and again on pretty big issues. President Trump falsely claimed on Twitter repeatedly that President Obama was criminally engaged in tapping his phones prior to the election. Obama ordered the wiretapping of Donald Trump, for which there is zero evidence.
There's zero evidence. Now, I agree, wiretapping was a poor choice in word. It wasn't wiretapping. But we have found out that there was surveillance.
Poor choice of words he made several times, just to be clear.
I agree. But let's look at surveillance. There was surveillance right now of Trump campaign officials, people that worked for the Trump administration, Trump Tower. There was surveillance, and these were actually pulled under FICA rules. These were pulled by the FBI. So he's not too far off on this, that people, for some reason, for ties to Russia that have yet to be found. We're talking about evidence. You're sitting there talking about evidence about voter fraud.
They're investigating Russian ties.
There is no evidence that there were any ties, really, between the actual Trump campaign to influence, that Russia tried to influence.
The FBI is investigating those ties. They're not investigating millions of illegal voters.
You've never seen any evidence put out. Where's the evidence that Trump was tied to Russia and that they tried to influence this, that actually had a difference on our election?
The former U.S. intelligence chief, James Clapper, says there was no Rush wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time. FBI Director James Comey says, with respect to the president's tweets, I have no information that support those tweets. The FBI chief doesn't agree with the president on this. Another lie.
But there was surveillance. Like I said, wiretapping's not the best word.
Why did he say it several times?
You have to ask him on that.
No, I'm asking you because you're here to defend him.
There was illegal activities, or more. Maybe it's not even illegal.
Again, you're defending things he didn't say. I'm asking you what he said.
Okay.
He said Obama wiretapped my phone. He's a sick man. He said.
No, he's not a sick man. Just
that's what Trump said about Obama.
Is having an administration headed by President Obama that actually used their resources within the FBI to surveil another campaign while actively campaigning against that candidate.
There is zero evidence. There is zero evidence President Obama ordered anyone to surveil anyone. Do you have any evidence that President Obama ordered anyone?
Did it come out of his mouth or did it come out of his administration?
Did President Obama...
His administration.
No. I like the stance of answering a question with a question, but I'm going to re-ask my question.
Do you think it's wrong?
President Obama... Do you have evidence that President Obama ordered the surveillance, the wiretapping of President Trump? Do you have evidence of that?
I am not in the
Oval Office. It's a simple yes or no answer.
I am not in the office. I do not know.
So you don't have evidence.
So
once again, you don't have evidence for this claim.
I am not. You have the same access that I have right now. I don't have.
And I'm not the one making spurious claims.
But I have. We do know that there was surveillance done. Do you not think there's something wrong with that?
It's been a long time since those tweets from Trump. He's not put forward any evidence to support those claims. In fact, Comey, his FBI chief, has said there is no evidence for those tweets.
You don't believe that? You do not believe that Trump campaign people were falsely surveilled in some form?
But this is a problem, Scottie. Trump could have tweeted, "I'm outraged that people on my campaign were surveilled by the FBI over false links to Russia." He didn't say that. He said Obama tapped my phones. Do you see the difference?
I love how you're looking at the words.
What?
Yes,
I'm reading. You love how I'm looking at the words. What should I look at?
I agree. Wiretapping is the wrong word on this.
I mean, his words are what we have to go on.
Yes. Okay. But here's the thing. You're right. But let's talk about the Pandora's box and the wrong and the unethical administration of the President Obama, his administration, and even doing this. This should be scary, whether you're Republican or Democrat, that a president is willing
and knows that his administration is
going after a candidate with no real evidence that there are ties between the countries.
Let's agree on something. We all agree that excessive surveillance on the part of the state is something to be concerned about. What we should all agree is that the president shouldn't make false claims. One final question before we run out of time. In his first 100 days, we've had this drip of information emerging from the administration about ties to Russia, an official FBI investigation into potential ties. His former national security advisor, General Flynn, who had to resign in scandal within a few days of taking office, now allegedly asking for an immunity deal. More and more Republican congressmen, senators asking questions about this stuff, talking about inquiries. It's only a matter of time until he's impeached, isn't it? You must be worried. You must be worried that he won't get to 2020.
No, but let me ask you this question. Trust me, if Barack Obama didn't get impeached, level of scandal, trust me, President Trump's going to be fine. That doesn't mean that we don't have issues within our own Republican Party, as the latest few weeks have revealed, that we're hopefully getting our own house in order.
It's the president.
The issue is with this, the people actually are engaged and are staying engaged and are holding their elected officials, Republicans and Democrats, accountable. Hence why I don't think you're going to see him impeached, because the people are still supporting him. The people who got him elected, he's fulfilling his campaign promises. They would elect him again.
Scottie Nell Hughes, thanks for joining me on UpFront.
Thanks for having me.
Donald Trump won the election by the hand of God. Those were the words of Franklin Graham, one of the most influential Christian leaders in the US. That statement is, shall we say, debatable. But there's absolutely no debate that evangelical Christians, and especially white evangelical Christians, helped Trump win the presidency. According to exit polls, 81% of white evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. Not the most practicing of Christians, some might say. So why did they do it? Joining me in the arena to debate this is Jim Wallis, the president of Sojourners, a Christian social justice organization, and a former spiritual advisor to both Barack Obama and George W. Bush, and Eric Metaxas, the best-selling Christian author, radio host, and Donald Trump supporter. Thank you both for joining me on Upfront. Eric Metaxas, in the run-up to the US election, you wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal encouraging Christians to vote for Donald Trump, not for Hillary Clinton. Why did you and millions of evangelicals line up behind a candidate as unorthodox as Donald Trump, shall we say?
What do you mean by unorthodox?
He's not really a guy most Christians would opt for, given his record of lack of profession of faith, his personal life, bragging about sexually assaulting women, thrice married, public adultery, etc., etc. Formerly a supporter of abortion.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask you that is because the observation you just made makes a lot of assumptions about Christian evangelicals, Christians in general, that I think no longer can be made. I think that one of the good things that has happened in the world of serious Christians, conservative Christians, over the last 20 or 30 years is we finally understood that even in public life, the Christian faith is about grace and forgiveness more than it is about moralism, morality. This doesn't mean that morality and character don't count, but at the end of the day, Christianity is not a faith that is principally focused on one's sins, but on forgiveness and on grace.
Jim Wallis, he did receive staggering support from evangelical Christians. He got more support than people like George W. Bush, a born-again Christian, someone who was very proud and public about his faith. Do you agree with Eric's assessment?
Just to clarify to your audience, the most important word you said was white. White evangelicals. Evangelicals, black evangelicals, Hispanic evangelicals, Asian American, did not vote for Donald Trump. So white evangelicals did, I think because they were more white than evangelical. There's never been a racial divide like this in the churches. Black evangelicals said to white evangelicals. So you're saying you didn't vote for Donald Trump because of his racial bigotry, but his racial bigotry wasn't a deal breaker, a disqualifier for you. That's why there's such a gap here.
Eric, how do you explain the racial divide amongst evangelicals?
Well, first of all, I find that liberals talk about race a lot more than conservatives or moderates. They seem to be obsessed with dividing people up into racial categories, which I find wrong, to be honest, and unchristian, first of all. But secondly, I would say that the Democratic Party has taken African Americans and Hispanics for granted. They have not served them well. They've served them incredibly poorly over the last 40 or 50 years. And so a lot of people thought, I actually think Donald Trump would do better for them. And I think that that's a fact. And people know that many African Americans and Hispanics voted for Trump. People don't talk about that, but compared to how many voted for Bush and voted for Romney, that ought to be mentioned.
Jim?
It's not true. None of that's true. This is not about Hillary Clinton or Democratic Party.
Why not?
Evangelicals, black, Hispanic, Asian Americans voted overwhelmingly against Donald Trump. And you know, this is about protecting the most vulnerable. And Matthew 25, which isn't liberal, it's in the Bible, the words of Jesus. Our principal goal in public life and for government is to protect the most vulnerable, the poor and most vulnerable.
It doesn't say for government.
It includes everything in our public life, including
That's a sloppy and wrong-headed interpretation of the scripture.
I'm sorry, it's not sloppy or wrong-headed. It's what we are holding governments accountable to. The prophets in the scriptures all say governments. They say governments, kings, rulers, are going to be held accountable.
Okay, Eric, as you voted for him as an evangelical, did you not feel repulsed by some of the stuff he had said, some of the stuff he had done? In a way,
There's no question. Obviously, I felt repulsed.
So did you vote by holding your nose? Did you vote reluctantly? I'm just wondering what your personal approach was.
Well, yes, I said that my support was tepid, but people don't really believe that that can be possible. The fact of the matter is this. Hillary Clinton was so frightening to so many people.
So he was the lesser of two evils. That's your view.
Yes, to some extent, yeah. Everyone is the lesser of two evils. Everyone has good and everyone has bad. And we, as mature citizens, hopefully, are obliged to make
Many
a
would
choice.
argue, as
If
you know,
do
Eric,
not-
there's never been a candidate like Donald Trump. There's never been a presidential candidate caught on tape bragging about sexual assault weeks away from the election, which turned a lot of evangelical leaders off him.
Everyone in public life has said and done things that would turn off anyone. At some point, you're forced to make a decision. In the case of Hillary Clinton, her standing up for her husband, who everyone actually believes really raped people. People see a double standard, and they're tired of it. People don't talk about that. And I think that there was an anger because of that double standard.
Jim, briefly.
11 million undocumented people in this country. They're churchgoers, they're pastors, they're families. Do you want to, as Donald Trump has promised and threatened to do, deport 11 million undocumented people?
I don't see it. Do you see him doing that?
He is deporting more and more people all the time who are
so
family.
silly.
It's not silly, it's facts.
I'm depressed. I'm depressed by the
sorry,
dialogue.
Eric. These are facts of what he's doing to poor and vulnerable people.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I just want to move on to quite an important issue that we haven't talked about, abortion. Abortion and the Supreme Court nomination. Eric, many would argue that you said at the very beginning that evangelicals have moved on. You know, judging people's personal character is not the deal breaker when it comes to voting. The polling suggests there's change. I think 30% of white evangelicals said in 2011 that an election official who commits an immoral act can still, do their job. Now 72% say that. Many people look at that and say that's just evangelicals being cynical. They want to stop abortion. They want to get a Supreme Court nomination, and it doesn't matter who gives it to them. Even if it's someone as flawed and as amoral as Donald Trump seems to be, we'll back him as long as he gives us our Supreme Court justice.
Well, you can make it sound cynical. And I'm sure that there are some people who are cynical. I hope that I'm not cynical, but I am pragmatic in the sense that I think that killing unborn human beings is a deal breaker. It is something that we will be held accountable for by God as a nation. And it seems to me that it's just like slavery. When something you know in your heart is wrong, you want to do anything you can to help people wake up. And I think by appointing Gorsuch or whomever, you will at least get it pushed back to the states so that American citizens can vote on it, rather than the Supreme Court finding some ridiculous place in the Constitution where they claim
Eric,
there's a right to an abortion, which most lawyers say there's not.
Hold on, Eric. A lot of people watching, including a lot of women watching, will be deeply offended by your comparison of abortion
None
and
of
slavery.
those women
But
were
hold on,
aborted. You'll notice.
Let me finish the question. A lot of people will be offended by your comparison between abortion and slavery. There's three
for
men
them.
here, so I have to make
I'm
that point.
offended that they're offended.
Okay, and number two, they would also look at you and say you are being cynical because you're saying, here's a guy who's accused of sexual assault by a dozen women, and you're saying, no, that's not the deal breaker. Abortion's the deal breaker for me. I don't care what he does as long as he stops abortion.
No. Again, see,
That's
the
what
point
you
is that
imply.
if you really want to know, but if you really want to know what people think and believe, you have to give them an opportunity. What the media tends to do, and what you're doing now, is you're trying to force people into saying, yes, I'm cynical, this is all I care about. People are much more complicated and nuanced than that. So there's 100 things that cause us to vote or not vote for someone. You have to take them all into consideration.
So
but I will
abortion
say
wasn't
this
the top
again.
issue?
Well,
Was it or
think
was it
about
not the
what
top
it was.
issue?
What about corruption? I mean, I think that people were fearful, genuinely fearful, if Hillary Clinton got in office, that she would be so corrupt that she has sold her
So they
soul.
voted for a guy whose family business is now intertwined with the U.S. government.
I don't believe that Donald Trump cares about his business at this point.
I'll let your listeners decide who they think is more corrupt, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. I won't give the pro-life issue to the far right like Mr. Metaxas. I voted against Donald Trump in part because I am pro-life. Not just pro-birth, but when children come out of the womb, if they're poor, if they're vulnerable, if they're black, Donald Trump is destroying their lives. Pro-life means, and Pope Francis has made this very clear, pro-life is not just about abortion, it's about how we treat the poor, how
Jim,
we
I
treat
agree with
all
you.
of life.
I totally agree with you.
The fact is Donald Trump's promises and policies are aimed at the people Jesus taught us, and in the text it says nations, Eric, nations to protect. The policies that Donald Trump is supporting and are being promoted in the Congress by many of his allies are taking health and life and food and heating and survival
Okay.
away
I
from the
respectfully
poor
disagree.
people. Well,
I respectfully disagree with you.
disagree
Eric.
that ideology is not going to save us here, but Scripture will.
Eric, are you worried that he's going to let you down at some stage, given his previous clear lack of support for evangelical Christianity?
No.
You have absolute faith in Donald Trump?
I don't say I have absolute faith, but am I worried? No. I think listen, I am obliged as a citizen and as a Christian to hold his feet to the fire just as I would have held Hillary Clinton's feet to the fire. But that doesn't mean that I'm sitting around wringing my hands. As far as I can see, he has done reasonably well, and I have no reason to believe that he won't continue so to do.
Gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. That's our show. Up Front will be back next week.